Good morning, friends. So, yet another day God has given us to learn His Word, and we will continue with our subject, Introduction to New Testament. Let me share the screen with you for today's topics. All right. Okay, I hope the screen is visible for you as well. Okay, let us begin our study today. So yesterday we were looking into we began the political background of the New Testament, where we started off with the Babylonian period, where the Jews were taken into captivity, particularly the southern kingdom were taken into captivity. And after the Babylonian kingdom came the Persian kingdom, and after the Persian kingdom came the Greek kingdom. And after Alexander the Great, in the Greek kingdom, the kingdom was divided mainly into two, Ptolemies and Seleucids. Of course, into three, but for our study, we concentrated on Ptolemies and Seleucids. And later came the Roman kingdom. And in between that, we also learned about the Hasmonean dynasty, okay, the Maccabean revolt, and how that gave rise to the Hasmonean dynasty, which is nothing but Jewish rule. All right. Finally, we concluded the Roman period, and we will continue with the Roman period today, and we will move into the next topics. All right. Fine. So as you see in the screen, the internal strife among the Maccabean family paved the way for the Roman rule. Okay, Maccabean family is nothing but the Hasmonean dynasty. Okay, last class we were discussing about them. And finally, when we came to the Roman period, I said the Romans very easily captured the Hasmonean, overpowered the Hasmonean dynasty, and they captured Palestine. Why they were able to do that very easily was because of the internal strife among the Maccabean family. They themselves had issues in their government, so it was easy for the Romans to capture them. Second point, the Roman Empire began as a small group of villages which later gained political power. Okay, the Roman Empire, or so to say Rome itself, it began as a group of small villages. Okay, back in the history, if you go down to a few centuries earlier, that is how Rome began, emerged. But later, it gained political power, and they came to glory by 63 BC. The Romans gained military supremacy and came to power. All right. And for our study, we'll be concentrating on some of the important Roman emperors, all right, who are sometimes seen in the New Testament as well. All right, we'll begin that. Augustus 27 BC to 14 AD. And it was during the time of Augustus Caesar that Jesus was born. Okay, then comes Tiberius, AD 14 to 37. And it was during the reign of Tiberius, Jesus' public ministry and crucifixion happened. Okay, very important emperors for our study of the New Testament. All right. Moving further, Caligula, he comes after the death of Jesus, but very much during the early church ministry. Okay, that is AD 37 to 41, his reign, a very short period, but it was during his reign that this event happens. Paul escapes from Damascus and goes to Jerusalem, about which we read in Acts chapter 9. Then Claudius, AD 41 to 54. What happens during his period? Jewish people expelled from Rome. Execution of James, the brother of John. Peter arrested under Agrippa I but escaped. All these you read in the book of Acts. Okay, Jewish people expelled from Rome. We read about it in Acts chapter 18. execution of James, the brother of John. We read about that in Acts chapter 12. Peter arrested, Acts chapter 12. Okay, all this happens during the period of Claudius, Emperor Claudius. Then comes Emperor Nero, AD 54 to 68. You might have heard about Nero, the name Nero. He began the persecution of Christians in Rome. Okay, the persecution was there even before that, but Nero began the large-scale persecution of Christians, the Roman persecution. Then comes Vespasian, AD 69 to 70, and under his rule comes the destruction of the Jerusalem temple by the Romans. Remember, yesterday we learned the importance of the date AD 70. Okay, some of the dates are very crucial. Okay, last class also I mentioned BC 586 BC, when the Jerusalem temple was destroyed by the Babylonians. 516-15, when Jerusalem temple was rebuilt and rededicated. And here AD 70, the Jerusalem temple, that is the second temple, was destroyed. Destruction of the second temple, and that was during Emperor Vespasian. And after him comes his son Titus, and Titus AD 79 to 81. Many New Testament writings developed during his period. Okay, of course, before as well, New Testament writings were there, but Titus's period, some of the Gospels, we could say, were written. And then comes Domitian, AD 81 to 96, a good number of years. And it is very important for our New Testament study as well, because during his period, there was again a large-scale persecution of Jews, Christians. Okay, that's what is believed by the church history and scholars today as well. So what he did, he claimed himself as God and ordered worship of a statue in the temple of Ephesus. Okay, that is called as emperor worship. Okay, you need to be aware of this phenomena called emperor worship. There was this practice of emperor worship where emperors, Roman emperors, claimed themselves as God and demanded worship of people. Okay, back then during the time of the Babylonians, Nebuchadnezzar, the Babylonian king, there also he did something like that, right? He claimed himself as God and ordered worship of his statue. Okay, later it was not so much in practice among the other kingdoms like Persian kingdom or Greek kingdom, but now it comes back with great force. Okay, and Domitian, he claimed himself as God. He had a statue of himself in the Ephesus temple, and people had to worship him. And that was a problem for the Christians, because they cannot worship anybody else other than Jesus. So what happens? Christians refuse to worship him, and that results in Christian persecution. And it is said that the book of Revelation was written during his time. Okay, John the apostle was exiled to Patmos by Emperor Domitian. That's the church history testimony. Okay, Emperor Domitian, another important figure. Then comes Trajan after him, and Christian persecution continues during his period as well. Okay, so these are some of the highlights of the Roman period for our study of Introduction to New Testament. And concluding slide, this is the concluding slide. Let me read it for you. After the death of Jesus, Christian faith grew to the extent that it caught the attention of the later emperors, who looked at Christianity as a threat to the Roman power. Thus, the early Christians underwent severe persecution and atrocities under tyrant rulers such as Claudius, Nero, Titus, and Domitian, and even Trajan. Okay, fine. So we have gone through 5 major periods: Babylonian, Persian, Greek, Hasmonean, and the Roman periods. Okay, you need to be very, very clear about all these periods and the important events of these periods, okay, which are very, very necessary for the study of New Testament. All right, one more area that we need to concentrate in the political background is Herods. Okay, this also comes under the Roman period, but we will focus on it as a subtopic. Okay, Herods. Okay, who are these Herods? Let's just go through the points. The Romans placed a king or had a king, and then they placed governors and other rulers in the land when they came to power and subdued Palestine, but they also tried to preserve some institutions of native rule. Okay, that's what this point says. Let me briefly explain it for you. The Romans had a king, that is the emperor. Okay, like Emperor Trajan or Domitian or Claudius, whoever it may be. Okay, they had an emperor at a point of time, and under the emperor there were other rulers. Okay, like governors and other rulers in the land. Okay, it's just, you can imagine like how our government functions also. Okay, there is a president, a prime minister, and then there are chief ministers, right? So it is something like that. Not we cannot equate both, but you can just compare it, an analogy for understanding how it functioned. Okay, so the Romans had an emperor, and then they had other governing officials like governors and other rulers. And not just that, they also had some native rulers. What do we mean by that? Native rulers simply means if they ruled Palestine, then they had some Palestinian people or people who are related to Palestine to rule the people in that region of Palestine. Okay, those are called the native rulers. And these Herods come under this category of native rulers in one way. Okay, we will just see how they can be understood as native rulers, but they more or less fall into this category of native rulers. Okay, that's the second point. In the native rule, the Herods came to power as puppet kings of the Roman emperors. Puppet kings meaning they don't have the ultimate authority. They are commanded by the Roman Empire and they are under the Roman emperor. Okay, they do not have ultimate authority, but they act as rulers of that particular place where they are appointed. Okay, and in our case it is Palestine. Okay, third point, the Herodian dynasty began with Antipater, and his son Herod called the Great inherited the government and all his father's ability in diplomacy. Okay, the whole Herodian dynasty, it begins with the man called Herod Antipater. Okay, but yeah, anyhow, we don't read much about him in New Testament, but we read more about Herod the Great. Okay, at least Herod the Great is very much close to the New Testament time, to the birth of Jesus, and yeah, especially to the birth of Jesus. Okay, and Herod the Great was nothing, he was the son of Herod Antipater, and he inherited the government from his father and also his abilities of diplomacy. All right, Herod the Great ruled all of Palestine from 37 to 4 BC. Okay, see, it's quite a long time, right? From 37 to 4 BC, he ruled all of Palestine. And he was first appointed as king by Mark Antony. Okay, don't understand this king as the emperor of Rome. No, it's not the emperor of Rome, but he was the ruler of Palestine. That's all. Okay, he was first appointed as king by Mark Antony, but later confirmed in that position by Antony's chief rival, Caesar Augustus. Okay, these are Roman Empire issues. We'll not get much into it, but just for your knowledge, you can get to know about that. He was first appointed by Mark Antony and later confirmed in that position by Caesar Augustus. The next point, he was known for his political maneuvering because of gaining support of both the rival leaders. Okay, so this is another interesting character of Herod the Great. Okay, whoever was in power, he was able to just get their favor. Okay, that is called as political maneuvering. It is more or less like how politicians work even today around the world. Okay, so that's political maneuvering. He gained the support of both the rival leaders. Third one, he rebuilt the ancient city of Samaria into a Greek city. His most important work was the expansion and refurnishing of the Jewish temple in Jerusalem. And fourth point, Herod's temple was regarded as one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. The pinnacle of the temple was the highest architectural point in the world. Okay, he was known for architectural works. Okay, he built many things, very significant things he built, which are time-honored things. Okay, he converted the ancient city of Samaria into a Greek city, and very importantly, he renovated the Jewish temple. It was not simply renovation or repair work, but then he expanded the Jewish temple, the Jerusalem temple. That is nothing but the second temple. The second temple was in existence since 515 BC. And when Herod the Great came to power, he expanded the temple, renovated it, and made it as a world wonder, 7 wonders, like one of the wonders of the ancient world. That much of work he did to that Jerusalem temple. And during the time of Jesus, this was the temple of Jerusalem. Okay, it was not simply the temple that was built and dedicated in 515 BC, but it was the temple renovated and expanded by Herod the Great. And apart from this, he also did some other construction works, significant works, but we'll not go into them. All right. Next one, ethnically. Okay, this is very important for us. Ethnically, Herod was from Idumea, and thus considered as half Jewish. All right, but he was considered by the Jewish as a foreigner and a Roman collaborator. Okay, why do we call or consider Herodians or Herod's dynasty as a native rule? It was because, or it is because, Herods were half Jewish. Why were they half Jewish? Because they were from Idumea. Idumea was a territory, a region below Judea, okay, or Palestine. Okay, it was below that. More or less, that's the ancient Edom. Okay, that's ancient Edom. That is what in the New Testament times we call as Idumea. Okay, and then they were partly a mixed group. Okay, a mixed group, and they had the Jewish blood also. Okay, that is why they are called as half Jewish. Okay, and during the time of Antipater, they gained political control over Palestine, and their control continued as a native rule because they were half Jewish. The Romans appointed Herods as native rulers. Okay, that's the reason they are half Jewish. They have that blood, Jewish blood in them as well. Okay, the next point, though Herod seemed to be a competent ruler in many respects, he was paranoid to the point that he actually inspired a Roman proverb, better to be a pig than a son in the house of Herod. Why? Next point says Herod killed his 3 children, 3 of his children, not just 3, he had a few other children also, but he killed 3 of his children on suspicion that they covered his throne, and he even killed his Jewish wife who was suspected of plotting against him. Okay, that much he was paranoid. Okay, he was so much addicted to power. He did not want anybody to overpower him. That's why he even killed his own sons, 3 of his sons, because he suspected them that they are coveting his throne. And he also killed his dear wife. Okay, he had many wives, and this particular wife was very dear to him, but still he killed her because of his suspicion that she was plotting against him. Okay, that's why that proverb came into existence, better to be a pig than a son in the house of Herod. Why? That's because he didn't kill a pig, but he killed his sons. All right, so that's the strange thing about him. And now you can understand why he was killing around all the children when Jesus was born. Okay, when Jesus was born, Matthew chapter 2 says that he was called as the king of the Jews. And Herod was scared whether he will be a threat to his power, to his position. And so he killed the children below 2 years old. Okay, so that is no wonder, right? He killed his own sons, his own beloved wife. So it's no wonder that he killed other children. Okay, that's all about Herod the Great. The last point about his death, it is said that Herod's illness caused some mental disturbances leading to his death in 4 BC, and his kingdom was divided among his sons, Archelaus, Antipas, and Philip. All right, and we will move on to the next Herod, that is Herod Antipas. Okay, other Herods also existed, like Herod Archelaus, Herod Philip, but for our study, we'll concentrate on Herod Antipas. And very quickly, we'll go through the points. Among the 3 sons of Herod the Great, Herod Antipas is the most prominent in the Gospels. He was the tetrarch of Galilee and Perea. You can read of it in Luke chapter, I think 2, Luke chapter 2, verse 1 and 2. The next point, he ruled from 4 BC to AD 39. That's also a significant number of years. And Jesus' ministry, his crucifixion, and his the church ministry, the early years of church ministry, all coincide with his term period. Okay, he is known as Antipas by the Romans, but the New Testament referred to him simply as Herod. Excuse me. Okay, so the New Testament, you will simply see the title Herod. Okay, you will read about Herod in the Gospels. Okay, in the early part of the Gospel, later in the later part of the Gospel, and again later in the book of Acts. The title alone will be there, Herod, Herod, Herod. But not everybody is the same. Okay, Herod is just a title. It is like Pharaoh. But there were many pharaohs, right? Like that. Herod is a title. And then there were different Herods even in the Bible, okay, who are mentioned in the Bible. So when you read Herod in a particular verse, you need to know which Herod it was, whether it was Herod the Great, or it was Herod Antipas, or it was some other Herod. Okay, good. The next point, Jesus at one point referred to him as that fox, and he was alluded so not only because of his slyness, but of his craftiness and his vindictiveness as well. Okay, he was also a crafty man. Okay, that's why Jesus called him as the fox. Herod Antipas. During his 43 years rule, he built a new capital on the shores of the Lake of Galilee named Tiberias. The next point, Herod Antipas was a Jew, okay, just like the other Herods. He was a half Jew. He even took side with the Jews in protesting against Pilate's setting up of a pagan votive shield in Jerusalem. Okay, so he sided with the Jews against Pilate at one point of time. Okay, Luke's gospel also records that he attended the Jewish Passover in Jerusalem, Luke 23:7. Okay, that's when the trial of Jesus happens. Okay, remember, Pilate interrogates Jesus, and then when he comes to know that Herod Antipas was there, he sends Jesus to Herod, and that Herod is nothing but Herod Antipas, and we read in Luke chapter 23. The next point, when Jesus began his public ministry, John the Baptist criticized Herod Antipas for marrying his own niece Herodias, who was already married to his half brother. So this story also we know, right? John the Baptist and how he was killed, and that was done by Herod Antipas. He arrested him and later beheaded him at Herodias' request. And the last slide, Luke records that Antipas heard speculation about Jesus having raised John the Baptist, and he examined Jesus carefully when he was arrested, hoping to see Jesus perform a miracle. So all these things we read in the Gospel of Luke. Few other rulers who influenced the New Testament world are Pontius Pilate, who sentenced Jesus to death, and Herod Agrippa I, the son of Herod Antipas, with whom Paul reasoned in the book of Acts. Okay, this is the concluding point. Okay, it's not particularly speaking about the Herods alone. Okay, anyhow, it's just giving two other Roman rulers who are significant for our New Testament study, and they are Pontius Pilate, who was a governor, and Herod Agrippa I, who was the son of Herod Antipas. Okay, so that's all about the Herods, and they are very important for our New Testament interpretation, especially the Gospels and Acts. All right, so moving on to the socio-cultural and religious background of New Testament. We'll go through the slides very briefly. Okay, introduction. To understand the world of the New Testament involves the understanding of the life, culture, mindset of the people for whom the documents were written to. Okay, when we think about the socio-cultural or the religious world, it is just like the political world, which I mentioned yesterday. Why do we need to know the political background? Because the Bible has a particular political background, and it comes out from a political context. And the same way, there is culture, there is a social setting, and there is philosophy, and so on going in the world of the New Testament. And that's why we need to know the socio-cultural and the religious backgrounds as well, okay, in order to interpret. Societies in the first century consisted of a mixture of Jewish, Greeks, and Romans. And three important facets of the New Testament world are: politically, the Romans triumphed. Okay, they were in the empire. Culturally, the Greeks influenced the population. Remember, Hellenization happened during the time of Alexander the Great. But the influence of Hellenization continued even to the time of the Roman rule. Okay, that is, people had a Greek way of life even during the time of Roman Empire. And the Greek language, that is the Koine Greek, which we mentioned yesterday, which we talked about yesterday, that still continued to be the lingua franca, the common language of the people. All right, that's why we also see that the New Testament was originally written in which language? Okay, not Hebrew, but Greek. All right, so that is, culturally their influence was still active. And finally, the third point you see, as for religion, the Jews were known for their monotheistic faith based on Torah as the center. So the Jews continued to follow their Torah and their faith in one God, that is Yahweh. The next point, the society was also made up of different strata of people, such as rich and poor, educated and illiterates, aristocrats and common people, masters and slaves, virtuous and criminals. Okay, so all these groups of people were there in the society, and the society was a much divided society. Okay, it was not so much an egalitarian society. Okay, egalitarian means an equally divided society. It was not so, but then it was a society which had much differences in it. Okay, like rich, poor, educated, illiterates, and so on. And masters and slaves, we read more about them in the New Testament also. Okay, the last point there, the thinking of the people of this era were deeply influenced by great Greek philosophers such as Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle. You might have heard these names before. These are great Greek philosophers whose philosophies stand till today, whose names we know even outside of the Bible college. You will hear these names. Okay, so the people of the New Testament world, their thinkings were greatly influenced by these people's philosophies. All right, so with that, we move on to some of the major philosophical schools during the New Testament times. Okay, just a moment. Okay, very briefly, we will get introduced to these schools. First of all, Cynicism. This philosophical group grew out of Socratic teaching. The Cynics proposed that the height of virtue or perfection would be to have no wants at all. Thus, in order to be independent of all desire, they sought to abolish desire. Okay, so one key term when we go through these philosophies is virtue. Okay, attainment of virtue or perfection was considered as the highest good, okay, or the highest goal of humanity, and different schools had different emphasis of how to attain this virtue. And cynicism said that you need to abolish desire. You should not have any wants at all in order to achieve the perfection or virtue. It's more like Buddhism. Buddhism also says so, right? That you need to abolish desire, which itself is a desire actually. So there is kind of irony in that. But then that is this philosophy. The height of virtue is the abolishing of desire. The next one, Epicureanism. This group emphasized on free will and pleasure. They questioned fate. They did not believe in life after death. They encouraged the attainment of true pleasure. Excuse me. They encourage the attainment of true pleasure through the avoidance of anxiety, concentration on the present, on enjoyment of all things in moderation. For them, ultimate pleasure is virtue. So what is virtue for Epicureans? It is ultimate pleasure. And what is pleasure? The true pleasure is nothing but avoidance of anxiety, concentration on the present, and enjoyment of all things in moderation. So that way of life they proposed. Stoicism. The New Testament, Stoicism comes along with Epicureanism. Okay, later I'm going to ask you to find where Stoics and Epicureans appear in the New Testament. Okay, now itself you can note it down as your work, where Stoics and Epicureans appear in the New Testament. All right, Stoicism comes along with Epicureanism. Stoicism was founded by Zeno, who was from Cyprus and possibly of Semitic descent. Okay, his teaching emphasized the attainment of virtue through acceptance of fate, based on the notion that all things are predetermined. There is logic to all that transpires. So conformity to reason becomes the highest good. Okay, so how do you attain virtue according to Stoics? That is by conforming yourself to reason. That is the acceptance of fate. Okay, they consider that logic or reason governs everything, and you have to conform yourself or correspond yourself to that reason, which is the highest good, reason or logic. And that is Stoicism. Okay, we are just getting introduced. You just need to be aware of these different schools, the names of them, basically what they said in one or two sentences, one or two lines. That's enough. That's what we are doing. Okay, Platonism. Platonism is derived from the name Plato, the philosopher Plato himself, the great Athenian philosopher and founder of the academy. Plato lived in the 4th century before Christ. He was the friend and the greatest student of Socrates, and his thoughts were greatly influenced by his teacher. Okay, his teachings emphasize the reality of a transcendent world of ideas standing behind everything physical or earthly. Okay, two worlds. One is the real world and another is this material world. Okay, real world is also called as the transcendent world, and this material world is the earthly world, the physical world. Okay, the next point, thus the real world is a world of ideas and the material world is only a shadow of it. Okay, just imagine that, something like this. Okay, a transcendent world, a real world, which is the world of ideas, which is outside of human experience, and the other world is a material world, which is the earthly existence, the earthly world. And Plato believed that only idea which is in human mind is real, and therefore reflection, meditation, asceticism will open the way to deliverance. According to Platonism, knowledge is salvation, ignorance is sin. Okay, more or less that's the same with the Gnosticism, which we will see next. Okay, but Plato also shared that idea. One is to rise above to a comprehension of the real world. Okay, so you are living in this physical earthly world, and there is another world called as transcendent world, and you need to rise above this physical world, and you need to attain that transcendent world. That is virtue, or that is deliverance for the school of Plato. And how do you rise above and attain the transcendent world? That is through reflection, meditation, and asceticism. So these are the ways in which you attain your deliverance. Okay, in other words, so what all these philosophical schools are trying to do is they are trying to understand the way of salvation. To simply say, they are trying to understand the way of salvation. That's why they are very important for our New Testament study. Why? Because New Testament teaches the way of salvation, and that is Jesus Christ. Right? Finally, Gnosticism. As the name implies, it is derived from the Greek word gnosis, meaning knowledge. This philosophical orientation emphasized on knowledge as the only means of salvation. Matter is equated with evil while spirit is good. Okay, this is same with Plato. Okay, same with Plato. The matter is the material world, the physical world where we live. Okay, your laptop, your phone, your table, your water bottle, everything that is around you, that is matter. Okay, and that is evil while spirit is good. Okay, this spirit is not Holy Spirit. Okay, the spirit is simply the transcendent world. Okay, the transcendent world that they are talking about. Matter is evil while spirit is good. And according to them, God is too great and holy to have created this material world with all its evils and corruption. Okay, they believed in God. Okay, don't think that these philosophers did not believe in God. They had their own understanding about God. And see what Gnosticism says. They believed that God is very holy and he could not have created this evil world. The world is evil in which we are living. So God could not have created. That was their thought. Okay, but we know the truth from what the Bible teaches. God created this world. Anyhow, this was the thought of the Gnostics. And finally, thus to attain salvation, one should renounce the material world and seek the invisible world. Okay, and how you achieve that? That is through knowledge. Knowledge is the means of salvation. That is the emphasis of Gnosticism. All right, so these are the 5 major philosophical schools that we need to be aware about. Okay, we have just got introduced to them at a surface level. Okay, just getting introduced to the terms and what are the basic thoughts. Okay, these are very in-depth concepts and philosophies. We are not going into them in much detail. Okay, so this is an introduction, or just we have begun the socio-cultural and religious background. We will learn more about it in the next class. Okay, thank you.